Good morning and welcome to BBOC Live. This is the Week 10 college football betting preview. It's 10:30 a.m. Eastern. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, my fellow BBOC co-hosts, Colin Wilson, Mike Calabrese, and of course, the one and only Mr. Brett McMurphy. A lot to get to today. We'll give our two best bets, as always. We'll talk, of course, about the marquee matchup between Ohio State and Penn State, which will kick off in about an hour and a half. Well, big noon kickoff. So 12:15 probably kickoff on Fox. We'll give our weekly round robin underdog moneyline parlay. And we'll get Johnny Manziel's Hail Mary pick of the week. Before we get started here, if you want access to all of Action's pro projections, make sure to sign up for our annual subscription that is currently on sale. Access includes exclusive player prop picks from Sean Kerner and other members of the Action Analytics team. You also get access to exclusive expert articles, our best spread, money line, and total bets, and real ticket and money percentages. To sign up, visit actionnetwork.com/pro today and use code BBOC20 at sign up. One more time, that's actionnetwork.com/pro, BBOC20 at sign up for $20 off. Before we get started, gentlemen, I guess I should just throw out my best bet right now. This is what happens when you're doing a live show and you have a script and graphics. My best bet is Air Force catching a ton of points against Army. That line is on the move. Like, if you like that, go bet it right now. Army's quarterback is out. Huge drop off. I think it's going to keep going down. But that's a college football Saturday for you. But before we get to our first best bets, Colin, got some cursed Friday nights. And I was out to dinner last night. I have a friend in town, and I'm sitting at dinner streaming this Georgia State game. I have Georgia State plus 7.5 and plus 8. They go down 21 in the fourth quarter. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to enjoy my dinner. I turned it off. And after dinner, my friend pulled up the score and he said, lost by 7. And you were able to middle it. So maybe your Friday night lights luck is turning for the better.
Yeah, until you figure out that Tom Herman got pounded for my FAU bet. But no, it was nice to middle the UConn game. It's like we said on the podcast, you set a power rating, you come up in a dead number around 8 with it. And once UConn got over a touchdown, the defense was not good enough to be more than a 2-possession favorite. That showed in that back door. I mean, Georgia State could have come back and win that game if maybe there was 5 minutes left on the clock.
Shout out to Mora for not kicking that field goal late and going for it on fourth down. That was, talk about a lucky cover. Brett, I do want to, before we get to our best bets, I want to congratulate you on your Pavia pick last week. I think we've had a winning bet on a Vanderbilt game in every show this year. There's not one today, although I think it's a Ponzi scheme day. I like Auburn against Vandy. And Calabrese, how was your Friday night? And you ready to roll?
I'm good. We were talking pre-show. I have a Genty Heisman ticket. It seemed as though it was going to be a breakout game for their passing offense, but they left him in enough to stack 2 touchdowns later in that game, keeping him in the race. So I was happy about that. But everything is all about this big noon kickoff for me. Usually I'm in G5 land, but I'm as excited for this Ohio State Penn State game as any Power 4 game this season.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. Brett thinks the Heisman race is over and it's Hunter. We'll see about that. Look, 2 quarterbacks up there, and I think Genty still has a shot. It definitely has to get to 2,000. But if he flirts with 2,500, I don't think he's out of the discussion. But he's playing all these teams that are that's their goal, like just selling out no matter what, and to stop him. And you saw the Boise offense take advantage in other ways last night. But Gabriel Ward, if they run the table, they're going to be right there depending on their numbers. Both of them are double-digit favorites today. But let's get to our best bets. I'll kick things off. I already mentioned mine. I'm going with Air Force. I still like it where it is now. I mean, this thing should go even lower. 2 service academies playing each other, and you're catching a huge number. I mean, this is just an auto play for me. As of right now, we're at the same exact price that we were last year with the roles reversed. Air Force came in undefeated and ranked 8-0. Army was awful. They were, I believe, 2-5, and they just lost to UMass at home. They go into Air Force and win outright all of the turnover regression hit Air Force at once. They hadn't really played anyone. All of that is in play for Army. And now you don't have Bryson Daly, who has been absolutely incredible. I mean, Air Force has been atrocious, but they have familiarity with the triple option. Couple turnovers, couple red zone stops. I wouldn't even be shocked if they won this game outright. So give me Air Force, which and by the way, Air Force should go. Army's not going to have their quarterback, and I think Air Force is going to go with Hayes. I think Hayes, but maybe some Johnson too. They're two more mobile quarterbacks, so I think give them much more juice in the rushing attack. Their original starter was just awful and had to go. So I think that there's some more upside there as well. Colin, where are you headed for your first best bet?
I'm going to go to Ann Arbor and fade the #1 team in the nation. I'm going to take Michigan, getting just a little bit over 2 touchdowns here. And, we talk a lot on our BBOC podcast about how we don't think Michigan is a very good team. And, but they do have pieces that you can count on. And one of those is that Dylan Gabriel is absolutely going to see a pass rush today. And he has been his entire career pretty average, pretty vanilla this year. 2 big time throws, 2 turnover worthy plays. But I'm throwing out the last 2 weeks against Purdue and Illinois. He only saw 8 pressures. Of course, his numbers look good. He didn't have anybody in his face. That's going to change with Michigan today. They have the #1 pass rush in the nation as graded by PFF. And Oregon has problems creating explosive plays. They create explosive plays 125th in EPA during passing downs whenever they get behind schedule. So the Oregon offense probably going to have a little bit of problems getting into scoring position today. And Dylan Gabriel should not have one of his best days of the season. And then what about the Oregon defense? They're good against the pass. They're not good against the rush. Well, that's not what they're going to face today with Michigan. They're going to get a little bit of Alex Orji and Khalil Mullings. They're going to run outside zone for explosives and inside zone to move the chains. What Michigan does on the ground is right up the middle, which Oregon cannot defend on the ground. Let's go Michigan plus 14.5. Hopefully get a little Service Academy choking out possessions here and get this cover.
That's 2 Service Academies in a row, catching over 2 touchdowns. Yeah, Michigan, the Big Ten Service Academy. Vandy is the SEC Service Academy. But yeah, I think that's the key here. Oregon's run defense has struggled this year, which will enable Michigan to control the clock, limit the possessions of this game. And I think they can hang within 2 scores here. Well, if Air Force and Michigan weren't ugly enough for you, Brett's got something special up his sleeve for his first best bet.
Yeah, look, Stuck, you and Colin have your weekly trash segment on the BBOC podcast. Everyone remember, subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe. Well, this is at the very bottom of the trash barrel. I'm not going to get political here and talk about garbage, but if the parties want to really call something garbage, it's this game. UMass at Mississippi State. 2 teams, they have 3 wins. The worst game of the day. UMass has mainly been UMass this year, but they take on a Mississippi State team in a huge flat spot. The Bulldogs come off 5 consecutive SEC beatdowns by Florida, Texas, Georgia, A&M, and Arkansas. Oh, on deck next week is Tennessee. Compare that to UMass, which was off 2 weeks ago and routed FCS Wagner last week. The teams actually have one common opponent in Toledo. Mississippi State lost by 24. UMass somehow only lost by 15.
Should have won. They could have won that game. They outplayed Toledo.
Yeah, I mean, I will hold my nose. I will take UMass plus 18.5 and take a deep dive into the deepest, darkest pit of the garbage.
I love it. By the way, if you're watching on YouTube, thank you and welcome to our new BBOC channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe, like button. Really helps us out. Brett, you said that that's the worst game of the day. Might not be true because Calabrese might be going to the worst game of the day for his best bet.
I mean, we talk about how much we love betting Pavia and the Ponzi scheme. In terms of fading, there's not a better team and coach combo to fade than Trent Dilfer, and we're getting short on time because he is not going to be retained after this season. So I'm going to go to the well one more time, plus money with the Golden Hurricane here. Tulsa's coming off the biggest comeback in FBS this season. They were down 42-17. They give Kirk Francis the hook. They bring in Cooper Lega, who they had only really used as a runner this season. They just take the governor off of him and the whole offense, and they come all the way back and win 46-45. He's the National AP Offensive Player of the Week, 333 yards through the air, 5 touchdowns, up against this UAB defense that we all know is just horrific. 109th in tackling, 104th in coverage, 131st in havoc generated. That's what happens when Trent brings in his high school buddy to run a defense, doesn't upgrade after last season. They are just rudderless on that side of the ball. And then finally, when you look at what UAB brings in momentum-wise, it's white flag season for them. They've lost 6 straight, all by double digits, and Zeno is ruled out of this game. So on the other side, you have Tulsa. This is the final element for me. This is still the time of year when you need to talk a little bit about motivation. That miracle win, that comeback against UTSA, puts them in a position, if they can win 3 of 4 to get to bowl eligibility. They have to have this one. There's no overlooking UAB. So I think the wrong team is favored here. I'll take it all the way down to a coin flip at plus 100. Anything plus money beyond that, I think it's just a gift.
Calabrese staying on brand with the Dilfer fade. All right, let's get to the marquee matchup of the day between Ohio State and Penn State. Personally, I would prefer if this game is in primetime. I don't like when the biggest game of the day is at noon. That's just me. I mean, even put it at 3:30 is fine, but at night is preferable. So maybe that helps out Ohio State here. Question for the group. If Ohio State loses this game, they'll have 2 losses on the season. They pretty much are out of Big Ten title contention, because I don't think Oregon or Penn State are losing 2 more times, and they wouldn't have the tiebreaker versus either with 2 head-to-head losses. And then you still have Indiana in the discussion. But if Ohio State loses this game and then wins out, I'll ask you right now. Now it depends on so many other things and like what happens with other teams, and so it's hard to project. But do they get in to the college football playoff? What might work in their favor is if you're an Ohio State fan and you go down today, put on your Indiana gear. So you want Indiana to keep winning, because then that win against, presumably if they win out, if you beat Indiana, that win becomes a marquee win against a still undefeated Indiana team. Is that enough to get them in the college football playoff, or is Colin going to look like a genius for saying Ohio State was going to miss? Brett, I'll start with you. Does Ohio State get in at 10-2?
They do, Stuck. I think there's too many teams at the top in the SEC that are going to play each other, and those teams will shuffle down. So at 10-2, Ohio State gets in. 9-3 Ohio State with losses to Penn State and Indiana. Enjoy the Citrus Bowl.
Yeah, then they're definitely out. I mean, they wouldn't. What would be their best win? They wouldn't. I mean, they'd have no ranked wins.
Akron, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Akron's playing better. I kind of like Akron today. Colin, do you think they're out at 10-2?
I'm holding my plus 450 for the Buckeyes to not make the playoff. I'm holding on to it firm. I'm not hedging because they're going to lose.
And but your producers, can we put Colin's original bracket up? No, we don't have that. So that would have looked better if you left Ohio State out, but you ended up having Ohio State in there. Calabrese, they in or out 10-2 Ohio State, or does it depend?
I mean, obviously it depends, but if you're, forcing me to make a choice, I'm going to say out, because I just see this scenario where the Big 12 and ACC are going to sneak some teams in that have 1 loss. That I understand that Ohio State's this name brand, and the committee's really just putting together a TV product, and clearly they would love to have an Ohio State team in the field. But if all these other teams have 1 fewer loss, and when you look back on their season, like which marquee wins can they point to? You're talking about Indiana. I still think there's human nature in that room. Everything that Kirk Cignetti has done and this glow up for this program overnight, it's still Indiana. If that's where you're hanging your hat on and you're hoping to leapfrog a 1-loss team with 2 losses and you're holding that Indiana win as your best, I'm not sure that's going to get it done.
All right, before we share our thoughts on the matchup today, let's hear what Mr. Manziel had to say during an earlier conversation this week. Johnny, who do you like here?
I think I have to take Ohio State here. I mean, just with the uncertainty of the quarterback position right now, I mean, I would think in this game of how big of a magnitude it is for Penn State going against, Ohio State, I would think that Drew Aller is going to do everything in his possible, week to try and get back on the field and play this game. But really, I think Ohio State in this game is just going to be too good. They're solid. Look, they're a team that's trying to make a push and make up for a little bit of their wrongdoings against an Oregon team a couple of weeks ago. And I think they're just too tough for a Penn State team who's looked good throughout the season. But without Drew Aller, I really think they're a different team.
All right. So Penn State here, right around a field goal. I haven't looked in 15 minutes. Colin, where do we sit right now?
Yeah,
Side
we're
zone.
sitting. Yeah, we're sitting at 3 right now across the board. Heavily, a little bit more heavily juiced to Ohio State at -115.
Total. What's total set at?
Oh, we're set at 47.5.
Yeah, over is taking some money after the under took some money midweek. Over the key of 47, I would lean under here. There's just I would lean Penn State, but now that it's at 3, this is probably a pass for me. A lot of uncertainty at the quarterback position for Penn State. There's some other key injuries across the board. The deciding factor might just end up being Penn State's defensive line against this Ohio State offensive line, which already had questions on the right side. Now you have all these injuries on the left side. And you saw it really affect the running game last week against Nebraska. They just couldn't get anything going. The protection was breaking down. That would be my biggest concern, especially on the road in a hostile environment with all this offensive line uncertainty. But for me, as you know, this Penn State offense, can it find some more explosiveness? I think that Ohio State actually has some guys that can match up with Tyler Warren. They probably can play man on the outside. Can these Penn State receivers step up? How healthy is Aller? There's a lot of uncertainty here. Lean Penn State and under, but ultimately a pass for me. Looking at the doc when everyone puts in their pick, I mean, it looks like Ionella has infiltrated this show. It looks like a lot of Penn State love. Colin, you're going to kick things off. You like Penn State?
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of reasons that you put out, we're going to take Penn State +3 because that left side of the Ohio State offensive line is an absolute disaster right now. They lost Josh Simmons for the season. They bring in the backup. He gives up a pressure and all 20 pass blocking. Now they're going to slide their left guard Donovan Jackson over. He's taken 2,045 snaps in his career, and only 4 of them have come at the left tackle position. So Ohio State's going to have some problems establishing the trench for the zone read concepts of Will Howard. Why? Because you don't want Will Howard throwing downfield in any situation. So an offensive line may be broken for the Buckeyes here. They're already outside the top 50 in line yards. The offensive line's never been doing its job for the Buckeyes team. And then if you're going to go to the other side of the ball, the trenches are failing for Ohio State on the defensive side too. They are outside the top 50 in line yards. They're getting pushed around by opposing offensive lines. And Ohio State cannot defend run concept power, which is going to happen all day today with Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen. I know Bo Prabula, we've talked about him on the podcast. Andy Kotelnicki is going to have his own playbook for Bo to come in and relieve Drew Aller in certain spots where they need to have a change of pace. Franklin was very clear in his press conference this week that, with Andy and I, we've never had differing playbooks for backup quarterbacks. This week, we'll have a completely different playbook for Bo. I think that is the difference here. Kotelnicki gets to get into his Kansas offense that he called for so many years with a quarterback that's got some mobility. So I like Penn State +3.
Trusting small game James to break through here. He has not been great in this spot. And he's also, I think he's 1-9 against Ohio State. Although in fairness, Ryan Day hasn't necessarily been superb in top 5 matchups. Already saw a loss earlier this season with some coaching missteps in that one. Brett, you're on board as well.
Yeah, I mean, I echo what Colin just said. And speaking of Colin, we were at Big Ten Media Days this summer. Cash your tickets, stuck. Ryan Day and every Buckeye openly talked about the goal this season was very simple: win the national title or bust. I believe that has put an incredible amount of pressure on this team. And at times, I think they're not even playing to win. I think they're playing not to lose. The greatest team money can buy has already lost at Oregon and looked like mere mortals in a near loss to Nebraska. And yeah, it's stuck. Penn State has had their issues. James Franklin has had their issues. They've lost 6 in a row as a home underdog. But Ryan Day counters that ineptitude with a 2-9 ATS record in top 5 matchups. With Ohio State's offensive line issues, an incredible home crowd there at Happy Valley, I give Penn State the slight edge. I will take the Nittany Lions as well, plus the field goal.
Calabrese, and you're going to make it 3 for 3. Have you been coerced? Is Ionella holding a gun somewhere off camera there?
Yeah, I don't even need the points. I'm taking the money line. I was there in Eugene. I took the money line with the Ducks. I think that there's something off with this Ohio State offense, and it really comes down to Will Howard in known passing down situations. The Buckeyes are 76th in aerial explosives on passing downs. His big time throw to turnover worthy throw ratio is nearly 1-to-1 in those situations. And when you look at him under pressure, slightly less than 19% of his dropbacks per Pro Football Focus. He's under pressure. His turnover worthy play rate climbs up to 7.7%. That's 148th out of 155 qualified quarterbacks, with his Pro Football Focus passing grade sub 29. I think when the lights are bright and when everybody on the field and the defensive sideline knows that he has to put the ball downfield, that's a bad situation for Ohio State. And then on the Penn State side of things, I don't think enough has been made about the Kotelnicki upgrade. From a yards per play perspective, this is the highest number that Penn State has put up. They're top 10 in the country since 1994. That was the Kerry Collins, Kajana Carter, Bobby Ingram super offense, the best one that Joe Pa ever had. That's the rarefied air that they're in. I don't think that's the national perception of this offense, that there's still some issues on the perimeter. And I agree, but Kotelnicki is such a genius that he schemes people open. He's got that, queen piece on the chessboard in terms of Warren moving him all over, having him play different positions. I think he's going to get the best of Jim Knowles in this game in the head-to-head, because what he had to do against Nebraska was bring a lot of pressure. I think that could spark some really big plays with players being way out of position with all of the pre-snap motion, the eye candy that Kotelnicki puts into this offense. So I think Penn State, clearly if this was a night game and a whiteout, this would be a bet of the month situation for me. But with a noon kickoff, I'll just take the plus 135, a regular unit play. I still think they're the better team.
Maybe Fox will push this back enough that the sun is set by the time the game kicks off. We'll see if small game James can finally break through in a big game. Win this, you can permanent marker Penn State into the college football playoff. All right, let's transition to our weekly round robin moneyline parlay. Colin, kick us off.
Yeah, we're going to start off with the Washington Huskies taking on USC. You're going to talk about this in a little bit, but hey, Steve Belichick, defensive coordinator for Washington, #1 pass defense in terms of coverage by PFF. Let's roll with the Huskies to get us kicked off.
Yeah, agree with that one. Let's go. Let's throw in TCU. I think this is a good matchup against Baylor. Can't really run on Baylor. You want to throw on them? Well, that's what TCU does. And you want to run on TCU. Baylor can't really do that. So I think this is a pretty good matchup for TCU. Give me the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, look for Syracuse to bounce back after Kyle McCord had 5 interceptions last week. That won't be the same against Virginia Tech secondary, and Virginia Tech is dealing with some key offensive injuries. Let's go with the orange here.
Give me Sparty. This is just a quarterback uncertainty play. How healthy is Rourke, and how will that injury impact his performance? And maybe Michigan State can get a lead here and make Indiana play from behind for the first time all season. I think Brett tweeted this out this morning. The only 2 teams that have yet to trail this year are Indiana and Army. And, Michigan State has been so good in the scripted portion. Can they actually get ahead and make Indiana play from behind for the first time? But mainly this is just the variance with the quarterback uncertainty. So give me Sparty and finish us up here.
Let's get our Algifs going today. We're going to do Rice against Navy here. No word out yet as far as EJ Warner is concerned, but Rice fired their head coach, Mike Bloomgren. Their special teams coordinator has taken over, and he is expected to have a ton of support from a roster that has $1 billion 6-year seniors on it. EJ Warner would be icing on the cake. Plus, the Owls have already seen the triple option this year, so they're going up against a Navy offense that has similar concepts. Plus, do we have injuries at the Navy quarterback position? We will see.
Like that. So we got Washington, TCU, Cuse, Michigan State, and Rice. Good luck if you're following along. All right, let's get to our second best bets. Colin just alluded to what mine would be, and it's Washington. I think this is a really good matchup for the Huskies at home here. Their elite pass defense against a pass-heavy team, I think, is really going to come in handy. And you can efficiently move the ball through the air and on the ground against this USC defense that has dealt with some key injuries. And Washington can do just that. I know Washington hasn't really been buttoned up in a lot of those ancillary areas, special teams, penalties, red zone. I think, there's some positive regression coming in that department. It's not like USC has been great in all those areas either. And this is a USC team that has not performed well on the road. I think they're 0-3 in true road games, all as favorites. So give me the Huskies at home to get it done. Trust in Mr. Fish. Colin, where are you going for your final best bet?
Yeah, we'll make this South Carolina +3. There's a couple of hooks out there on the board, which would be nice too. But we're going to take an elite Gamecocks defense when it comes to defending RPO quarterbacks. When you look at what South Carolina has done recently, they've ended the season for quarterback Michael Hawkins Jr. at OU. Jalen Milroe had 18 recorded rushing attempts, only 36 yards, could not get outside the pocket. Alabama also had 9 tackles for loss in that game. And then you look at Jackson Dart, who can rip explosives with outside zone, only 8 carries for 44 yards when he faced the South Carolina defense. So nothing for Marcel Reed. I'm sure South Carolina has prepared for Marcel Reed to come in at any point and run the offense that he does. And you say, well, Texas A&M can use Connor Weigman. Probably not. South Carolina is 18th of all FBS teams in created contested catches. So if Connor Weigman wants to go deep into that secondary, that's going to be a problem too. Now, South Carolina does have their own struggles scoring points with Lenora Sellers and Raheem Rocket Sanders running the inside zone read there. But what they are is elite in play action pass and getting explosives to get into scoring position. South Carolina games are wild, and this one's going to be wild also, but they have a defense here that can stop the Texas A&M offense.
Yeah, I mean, South Carolina, two plays away from being 4-1 in the SEC, and a couple of blown calls against LSU. Arguably should have won at Alabama. So they've been right there. This is a tough spot for A&M after that emotional win. South Carolina off a bye should be healthier here. And that element of surprise, which worked against Florida, which obviously worked last week against LSU, won't be there this week. And when that wasn't, arguably could have lost to Arkansas and maybe even Bowling Green. They only beat by 6 at home. So I think this is a good spot. For my A&M college football playoff futures, I do hope they win by 1. Although I don't know. I have South Carolina team win total over too. So a lot going on there. I told you this a couple weeks ago. I think Texas A&M, if they beat LSU, I think they're going to drop one of South Carolina or Auburn on the road, and then their college football playoff chances come down to the finale against Texas. I still think that's ultimately what happens. Brett, I think Colin spoiled your pick a bit earlier as well. Colin just took all of our best bets for the round robin. You like Rice as well.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good sign or not. I was thinking about going with the alma mater. Gundy has been a literal ATM as far being an underdog, but I don't know the mental state of the Cowboys. So yeah, I'm going with Rice +11. And speaking of mental states, Navy is not in a good spot here. They come into Houston in a horrific spot. The midshipmen played their annual Super Bowl against Notre Dame, and there was chatter before the game. Hey, Navy may go to the college football playoff with the win. Well, guess what? They were crushed. First loss of the year. I talked about this last week. Historically, teams that suffer their first loss of the season in October or later are in a dead spot the following week. They aren't pissed off about the loss. They're deflated. So far this year, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and Texas all failed to cover the game after their first loss. I think the trend continues here. It also doesn't help that Navy hasn't played anyone of note, and the only 2 teams with a pulse offensively, Notre Dame and Memphis, put up a combined 95 points. Throw in the fact that Rice has the second best defense in the AAC, all of the stuff that Colin mentioned as well. I think that'll do enough to keep Rice within the 11 points and keep their very slim bowl hopes alive if they can win out.
Yeah, Rice been playing better since the bye, and you can throw out the game last week without Warner. There is some quarterback uncertainty on both sides in this game, but I like Rice as well, catching double digits here under a new interim coach. For what it's worth, last week, we had 2 teams fire their head coach leading up to last week. Brett, help me out. Southern Miss.
Well, yeah, and Rice.
And Rice.
No, someone else before last week. Who's
East Carolina.
East Carolina, both covered
Yep.
Last week, for what it's worth. I mean, it's 2-game sample size, but and Calabrese, you're putting together an all-time beautiful card. You had Tulsa in the beginning. You're trusting small game James to win a big game. And where are you going for your final best bet?
Well, this last one's linked. I love to dump on Trent Dilfer. They should have hired Bryant Vincent, who's the head coach at Louisiana Monroe, and he has turned water into wine this season. It has been incredible because you have to remember where they were in the preseason. SP Plus rated them 134th out of 134 teams. Kennesaw State was right there. Bill Connolly was like, no, I'll put them all the way at the bottom of the barrel. And he wasn't out on a limb there. When you look at their composite roster talent over at 24/7 Sports, 130th, they had one guy who was a 4-star. He's not even playing at this point. So it seemed as though the Warhawks were going to be beyond year zero. They were going to be below ground in terms of the rebuild, but they put it together. They just continually, overdo their expectations. They've played really good football when they take on teams outside of Texas earlier this season. And then up against Marshall, this is a Marshall run defense that you can move the football on. They're outside of the top 100 in rushing success defense. And we keep throwing around tongue in cheek the which team is a service academy in which conference.
This is one.
This is one right here. Absolutely. The Warhawks are top 10, really top 5 in rush rate in the entire country, 21st in rushing success rate.
Low.
Yeah, it's incredible what Ahmad Hardy's been able to do. He's gone over the century mark in 3 of his last 4 games. They're going to shrink this game down. And then the game within the game, this is where this handicap is going to go one way or the other. It's A.J. Turner for Marshall. He has followed in the footsteps of Rasheen Ali. He's been their big play man on the ground, popping long touchdown runs. Well, the only thing that I can hang my hat on from a ULM defensive perspective is they are 12th in limiting rushing explosives. They make you earn it, put together long drives. That running clock is going to help in both ways. Up against a Charles Huff coach team, he's 7-10 against the spread as a home favorite. So with a total sub 50 in this spot, limited possessions over the key number of 10, give me the Warhawks plus 10.5.
Well, a fitting end to the best bets. We started it off with Air Force. Colin also started off with the Big Ten Service Academy, and you're finishing it up with UL Monroe, a complete snail as well. All right, before we get out of here, let's get Johnny Manziel's Hail Mary pick of the week. Winner of this game will still be right in the mix between SMU and Pitt, 2 teams that won last week in completely different fashion. You look, Pitt had they forced 5 turnovers, had 3 pick sixes against Syracuse. SMU survived in overtime against Duke despite a -6 turnover margin. They had 6 turnovers in the game, but were able to survive. Both quarterbacks, little banged up here, so adds some uncertainty. SMU all week has been around a 7 to a 7.5 point favorite here at home. Johnny, who do you like?
I like Pitt in this game. I'm going to go with the undefeated team. Even if their quarterback's a little bit banged up, I think this is a game they're going to have to rely a little bit more on their run game and a little bit more on their defense, who has been capable of making the plays they need to that we saw a couple of weeks ago. I think, this is a huge game, obviously, for them. One, they want to continue to try and stay undefeated against the SMU team. It's been these are 2 teams that have been pretty good offensively, but I'm going to lean with Pitt here and to get this win and stay undefeated.
Thanks, Johnny. Going with Woo Pig Suey. Colin on the other side here. There is some injury uncertainty with Ole Miss that I'm watching, with a couple of their key weapons questionable in this game. But thank you to Johnny. Thanks to Colin, Brett, and Mike. Thanks to our producers on the back end. Speaking of our producers, shout out to our podcast producer, David Payne, who was tweeting this morning about how he was he was angry he wasn't going to be able to stop for the BYU Utah game today, which is next week. But
I saw that too.
he does a great job for us. But most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. 959 Bad Beat. Don't forget about that. Call in for the voicemail recap episode on Monday. New BCS will be out by Tuesday as well. Group of 5 guys midweek. Colin, I'll be back with the Week 11 college football betting preview on Thursday. Releasing that earlier now, around dinner time each week. For the people, and we'll be back obviously each and every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern for the live show. One final reminder on the Action Network's pro projections. If you do want access to all of them, make sure to sign up for our annual subscription that is currently on sale. Access includes exclusive player prop picks from Sean Kerner and other members of the Action Analytics team. You also get access to exclusive expert articles, our best spread money line and total bets, and real ticket money percentages. To sign up, visit actionnetwork.com/pro today and use code BBOC20 at sign up. One more time, that's BBOC20 at sign up for $20 off. Thanks again for tuning in. Good luck on all of your wagers today, and we will see you next week. Cheers.